was started to align, and those 3 big projects coming to completion. I think it's very exciting for the future of Drupal. All right, so moving on. Can you see my slides? Hold on. There we go. So before we dive into Drupal 8, actually, I wanted to review sort of what we did for Drupal 7. So as probably all of you know, we started Drupal 7 all the way back in 2008, February 2008. Only just released Drupal 7 this year, 2 months ago or so. So we pretty much worked on Drupal 7 for almost 3 years. So that's obviously a very, very long time. And originally, we had sort of said, let's try and do a release 18 months after we kicked off development of Drupal 7. And so we had set the original code freeze date to be somewhere in the middle. Let's develop for 9 to 12 months and then do the code freeze period. That, of course, didn't happen. And so several times we had to push out the code freeze. And then when we finally were able to freeze, we had like 400 or 500 critical bugs that we needed to fix. And so that actually took also about 1 year to sort of work down the issue queue of all of those critical bugs. So if you zoom in a little bit, we worked on many larger initiatives, and there's a couple of them on the slide. And the way we approached this is that each of those initiatives we actually included in the main development tree in small chunks or pieces. And every time we did, every time we included those things in the main line, we introduced some bugs, and the number of critical bugs slowly but certainly started to increase. And then some of those larger initiatives were all split up in smaller pieces. And then eventually, we managed to release Drupal 7. It's not a perfect process, and I'll propose some changes to that in a bit. So the way we worked is, I invited Angie Webchick to be my co-maintainer for 7. Angie and myself, we worked a lot with the individual contributors in the community, all of the blue dots. And there was a lot of communication between them and us, and for a lot of people, not even enough communication, right? So for us, it felt like it was more than enough communication, and for some of the blue dots, if you will, for some of the developers, they still wanted to have more communication. But before I go on, I wanted to quickly give a very loud applause to Webchick, and I would like to invite her on stage. So for the first 6 months, I worked alone on Drupal 7, and then I invited Webchick, and I said something like, it's going to take like 9 months or so. And then it's going to go in maintenance mode, and it's going to be all right. It's not going to be too hard, and 9 months turn into 2.5 years. And it's not something that's, it's not something that we should take lightly, because it took a lot of work, both on Angie, but also on Lullabot, and also on Angie's partner. So. And for that, I think we should be extremely grateful. So thank you, Angie. All right. So keep moving. As I said, there's about 1,000 contributors. We've collected them in an image here, which we'll make available in Lido. Of those 1,000 contributors, we noticed, if we look at the statistics, that some of those people only contributed 1 or 2 changes, whereas other people actually contributed more than 400 changes. And it looks a little bit like this, like a long tail curve. And so if you look at the data, you actually realize that 30 people, 30 contributors are responsible for half of the improvements in Drupal 7. And so these 30 people they've also invested quite a bit of time and energy over the last few years in making Drupal what it is. And so to thank them, wanted to highlight them here on stage as well. So. Quick sketch. Chicks, Alex, please stand up when I call your name so people can see you. Let's see, Moshe, Bram, Jeff Burns, Weishet, Sun, Peter Wolonin, Gabor, Platch, Joyroy, Catch, Rob Loach, Jennifer. We have some more. Ooh. All right, there they are. Larry Garfield, Beth Mr. Bailey's, Dave Reed, Andy Post, Score, Derek, John Alvin, Christian, Boomba Tower, Webchick, Dan, Damien, Bojan for usability work, David, and Casey. Give them a big applause. Thanks, guys, for the last 3 years. For all the good times and all the bad times. All right, next slide. So also what I did is spend actually a lot of time listening. I did a lot of travel in the last 14 months. Visited a lot of cities, and in all of those travels, I tried to meet as many Drupal people as I could. So I met with end users, I met with developers, teamers, designers. I met with small business owners, large business owners, and I did a lot of listening about what they thought we needed to improve, what we could do better, and things like that. And I've also organized some more formal feedback mechanisms in the issue queues and on my blog and things like that. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about the things that I've learned. So first of all, I wanted to talk a little bit about all the things we did do well. Because there's a lot of things which we introduced in Drupal 7, which I think we did do really well. And so one of them is we adopted test-driven development. And we made it part of our workflow. So as people submit patches, we test those patches. And that actually helped save us a lot of time. Something else that we did do well is we started updating the developer documentation as we accepted patches into Drupal 7. And as a result, there's a limited backlog of API or developer documentation that needs to be updated. And it also helps during the development to have up-to-date documentation about some of the latest and greatest changes. Not sure if you remember, but when we kicked off Drupal 7, we actually hired Mark and Lisa to come in and look at Drupal to see how we can make Drupal 7 easier to use. We made it a big team for Drupal 7. We hired them. They looked at the design, the information architecture, and all of those things. That didn't always go really smooth. It was a learning process for everyone, but I think we came in really strong. When I travel, everybody or almost everybody that I talk to is really, really excited about the changes in Drupal 7 and the way Drupal 7 works. Plus, and this might be even more important in the long term, is that we now have a usability team. Out of that experiment, if you will, came a usability team with several members on the team. And the developers working on Drupal, they pull them in whenever necessary to get some feedback on, is this the right approach, yes or no. So that's something that we did really well, I think.